Hi, I'm D, this is Studio Togebi, and welcome to my updated fake tone tutorial. The reason for the update is I've started using Clip Studio Pro to do this process. I've also added a wider color range to my palette. I no longer work strictly in grays, I have the occasional shock color. That's necessitated a little bit of an update to my process. I will show you how to do this process in Photoshop immediately after I do the Clip Studio Pro demo, but honestly, of the two, I do prefer Clip Studio, and that will become apparent as we go through the process. The first step is to add a correction layer. Choose Hue, Saturation, Luminosity, and set your saturation down to -100. That allows us in the next step where we do the selection to get values only, irrespective of the RGB values. Go to select color gamut. Now I have an error margin set to 25. You're gonna have to play around with it and find the right amount of selection for you. But you will need to do multiple referring because we need to make sure that we're getting all layers, including the correction layer that we've added. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the color value that is the darkest that's not black. And I think that's probably this right here in her scabbard. So I'm going to select that there. Now, this is where the beauty of Clip Studio Pro comes in. You'll get this context menu when you have a selection going, and there's this option that looks like a little checkerboard. You click that, and that brings up your zip tone window. Now you'll have to play with your own settings here. I've got mine to 42.5 frequency, density of 40, angle 45, size 10, and circle. But this is what's great about Clip Studio Pro, is you have all these different potential choices here for your zip tone. I'm using circles because that's just what I like. It reminds me of old school comics, and that's why I do this process. So hit OK. Now you've got over here on the right your mask, your layer mask. So we need to rasterize that because the mask will have a bit of an anti-aliasing around it. So when we do the next step, which is to select our dots, if we haven't rasterized, we'll get too much selection and it's just not going to give the dot effect that we're looking for. So go ahead and do apply mask to layer, and it's going to give you a little warning here unless you tell it not to, and hit OK. And now I can come over here and grab the well, it's the magic wand from Photoshop, but here it's called auto select. I go to an empty space, I do my selection. Now again, you get this context menu down here, so do the invert selected area. Now I'm going to turn off these extra layers, and I'm going to select our raw artwork and come down here to this context menu again and do a copy paste. Now I'm going to multiply those, and let's just get rid of the selection so that we can see what it looks like. And there you go. So now we've applied our zip tones, and you can see they're nice and distressed because there's there's uneven selection because we use the values to do that selection, and I just really like the way this looks. Sometimes I might also repeat this process with the lighter areas by selecting the lighter areas, putting a blur filter on them, and then using that to do the selection, and then adding maybe a screen layer or an overlay layer with those with the white dots, and so you get a nice light bloom effect, but instead of being a gradient, it's dots. So let's go to Photoshop. To do the same thing in Photoshop, we're going to add let's see here. We're going to add a black and white layer, and then we're going to do a Control All edit, copy merged, Control V, and that gives us the same thing that we would get doing our selection in Clip Studio Pro with the all layers selected. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to select color range, and this is like the color gamut selection. I have a fuzziness set to 50, and I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to select my color from her scabbard, because that's, you know, seems to be the darkest value. I'm going to hit OK. There we get our selection. So now we need to add a layer and do a fill. So this is where Clip Studio Pro really shines, because in Photoshop, you're going to have to make your own dot patterns and save them as patterns for fills. Now, I have several because I work in different formats. This particular format, I believe we are at 22 by 22 pixel dots. So I have them saved that way in my patterns. My largest format, I think, is this one here, which is like 270 by 270 pixels per dot. And that's for like poster work, banners, that sort of thing. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here, and that's going to fill our selection with those dots. Now I'm going to do the same process that I did in Clip Studio Pro, where I click this empty space here, select the inverse, turn off our filter layers, come down to our base art, and then I'm going to right click over here and do layer via copy, and then multiply. Sometimes I'll use color burn, but in this case we'll just use multiply. I'll show you what it looks like on color burn. Doesn't make much of a difference on this particular piece. It just depends. You know, you could play around with it too. I mean, that's the beauty of having, you know, these dynamic layer selections, is you can, you know, try various things, like, you know, maybe see what hard light looks like. I like that. It's a little bit softer. It's a little less in your face. Anyway, feel free to use this method. I think this look has been kind of popularized by Into the Spider-Verse. Honestly, I've been doing it for years. It's one of the reasons why I liked Into the Spider-Verse, actually, is because it looked, you know, vaguely similar to the output that I get here. But if you'd like to learn more about my artistic process, I have a Patreon and I Twitch somewhat irregularly. I would say like and subscribe, but honestly, I don't YouTube enough for that to be worthwhile. Like, this is the first time I've made a video for YouTube in like at least 4 or 5 years, I think. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I hope this is something that's fun for you. And I'd love to see you, you know, try it out. So, you know, tag me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and let me know, or just, you know, send me an IM. I'd love to see what you're doing with it. Anyway, so have a good one.